Well, welcome everyone to the launch of Discover Orienteering. This has been a project that has been in the works for a while now. It was a little thought bubble years and years ago. Before the coaching curriculum had a revamp, and then this kind of molded a few times to uh, bend to orienteering. It also has bent towards what research the Australian Sports Commission has done. And then over the last year, David has been working on building up this program that wants to support new people in orienteering. You're going to find more about this program today. But for a start, I want to say welcome to everyone here. And if you're watching this recording afterwards, thank you for tuning in and watching. But let's start with an acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands where we conduct our sporting activities. We extend this acknowledgement to all traditional custodians and First Nations people throughout Australia, and we pay our respects to all elders past and present. And we recognise the outstanding contribution that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples make to society and in sport for Australia, and we celebrate the power of sport to promote reconciliation and reduce inequality. I also want to say a big thank you to the Australian Sports Commission. Without their funding, nothing in this participation space would be able to advance as fast as what it is doing. And they have generously increased our funding recently, and it means that we are able to produce products like this to make it easier for orienteering to be run in Australia so that we can spread the fantastic sport that we have. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you particularly for David, who's going to be presenting Discover Orienteering to us. We've also got Karen Woods, our new Manager of Coaching Development, join us. He's going to be talking about the coaching side of things. And also we've got Mike Dowling, the Chair of the OA Board. So thank you for joining us tonight. Mike, did you want to say hello to everyone?
Yeah, so good evening, folks. Thank you for joining tonight's launch. As Daniel mentioned, this project started, as I think it was way back in the latter part of 2022. It was a bit of a sort of a thought about a gap in what we offer. So it's been a long journey, and I'm going to acknowledge and thank the work that David's put into to get the program to this point where we are ready to launch what is another little puzzle in our participation pathway piece. And I guess it's connected, Daniel, to our other product, such as Learn to Orienteer and Kiddo. So the board is very much committed to supporting and developing systems through our participation workforce to provide structured learning opportunities for our fantastic sport. So I want to echo Daniel's thoughts of thanking the Australian Sports Commission as well. Without their support and funding, as Daniel said, we wouldn't be in this position today for not just this program, for a whole lot of our participation work. And I guess there's a connection to this, Daniel, about the current updated work that's going on. I know that you're working on with the new participation plan that will align with our new strategy that the board adopted at the end of last year. So without further ado, I've said enough, and I'm interested to see what comes from tonight. So thank you, people, again for joining this evening.
Thank you so much, Mike. And I think we are all kind of excited from those that have been working in the background to get to this point of launching Discover Orienteering. As Mike said, it is really the last little cog for our participant pathway. David's going to share a little bit about it in a moment, but there's so many things that have been building up towards this moment, and I think it's really exciting to get to this point of launching Discover Orienteering, and then as the new participation plan comes in, that's going to be for the next 4 years, aligned to the OA strategy, as Mike mentioned. It means that we're going to be able to have a good foundation to improve on. So let's get into it, David. What have we got to show our lovely folks tonight?
Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you, Mike. And thank you also everyone else for rocking up. It's great to see such a broad cross section of people here from around Australia. It's hopefully a testament to how important and big this project could become, and bodes well for getting things up and running all across Australia. So, as Daniel kind of mentioned, we're going to use this meeting to give you a bit of a vibe of what Discover Orienteering events are going to look like, and show you the resources and processes that are available, for you to set up Discover Orienteering in your own state and with your own clubs. And as Daniel said, there will also be time at the end to kind of ask questions, and perhaps get some feedback of the things that you've seen or what you haven't seen, because perhaps we haven't shown with you what we've seen, or maybe there's some exceptional circumstances that maybe we can help you overcome and make sure that we can implement Discover Orienteering really successfully all around the place. So let's dive right in. Uh, it was changing slides before. There we go. So the kind of
We
high
can't see it
level,
yet, David.
pardon.
We can't see it yet. So did you want to
Ah,
try share screen again?
that's interesting. It's showing sharing here. Maybe it just needs to cook for a little bit. I'll
There we go.
close it
Now
and
it's coming.
retry.
Good on you.
Is that working?
Yes, we can see the appendix one.
Perfect. Okay, there we go. Alrighty. So, to give a kind of high level view of where Discover Orienteering sits in terms of how we want a participant to interact with our sport, you can see I've just popped up a little diagram that hopefully lots of you have come across before of the OA participant pathway. And you can see we start off with what we call the explore phase. This is what we want our participants' first experience of orienteering to be sitting in. They're giving things a go. They're maybe rocking up to something, having a try, discovering that actually this is a really cool sport to be getting a part of, and that they want to get involved more. And then as they discover and explore how awesome our sport is, they can then progress onwards to bigger and better things. So perhaps once they've had that first hook in, they're more keen to learn about the kind of intricacies of orienteering and how they can really get the most out of running their course and being a part of the orienteering community. So that learn phase is where Learn to Orienteer obviously sits and has already been a really successful initiative. And then they go onwards once they've graduated from that Learn to Orienteer phase off to being active, competitive, and perhaps excellent at orienteering throughout their life. But what we're thinking about today with Discover Orienteering is that explore phase, the very first kind of interaction with orienteering that a participant is getting. So the executive summary for Discover Orienteering is a come and try event to introduce members of our community to the feeling of orienteering for the first time. So hopefully, as we go through this meeting, you'll keep thinking about that word feeling. Orienteering is a really tricky sport to introduce to people. There's lots of weird concepts to understand, lots of intricacies, including a lot that we, as regular orienteers, might take for granted. We can kind of quickly fall into the trap of either not providing the information that someone really needs, or over explaining and just dumping everything on someone at once, which can feel really overwhelming to the participant. And so, really, what we're trying to do with this Discover Orienteering project is to hook people in on the emotions that we're feeling when we orienteer. So, thinking about the joy that you might get when you spot that elusive orange and white flag in the trees, or spending time with your friends in the assembly area or out in the forest, the constant new challenges that there are that we get from running different courses in different places. Every new leg is different. All of those things that maybe it's hard to kind of, and you might seem a bit crazy when you're trying to tell people all of these epic things about orienteering. We really need them to experience it and feel it for themselves. So every aspect of this Discover Orienteering project resolves around three kind of key points. There's this feeling idea, encouraging positive, fun experiences in the participant. There's the volunteer element, trying to make these events that we're running as easy as possible for the volunteers and the organizers so that we can run as many things as possible, use our limited resources carefully, and make things easy so that we can really get the most out of the people and the time that we have. And finally, creating a nationally consistent brand and product so that we can make it easy for a participant to work out what they're trying to do for the first time when they're orienteering. They know that this is the thing that's for them. Discover Orienteering is their first entry point. It's plastered everywhere. If they go to the OA website, if they go to the club website, no matter how they kind of find out about things, they know that this event is for them and this is a great way to start orienteering. So, some key points to think about as we go through um, these slides. And as you perhaps consider planning a Discover Orienteering event for yourself, is to keep thinking about ways that we can reduce barriers to participation, however small they might seem. So a participant maybe not knowing where they begin, that steep learning curve of having to discover, having to understand lots of different concepts at once, maybe being fearful of particular things like being lost, snakes, whatever it is, um, jargon that we frequently use with orienteering. And there's this excellent story that I have put into the delivery guide, so hopefully you'll read it again. But we hold a school orienteering relay event in the ACT. And there was this one particular kid who was running down the finish chute of this little short, simple, easy orienteering course. And we had a fantastic, super energetic volunteer on the sidelines that was going, "Great work, really well done. Don't forget to punch the finish." And this little kid just stops in their tracks, pauses as if for comedic timing, except for the fact that they clearly had no clue what was going on, and just stares quizzically at this volunteer and then takes 2 steps forward and bashes the hell out of the orange and white flag that's in front of them, marking the finish. So it's there's lots of these words and things that we might take for granted and just sort of skip over, assume that everyone knows what we know, but actually things can get quite confusing for the new person, and we really have to think carefully about what information we provide and how we provide it. And finally, obviously, every state and club is in a unique position at the moment in how they're able or have been delivering beginner programs. This Discover Orienteering project will forever be a work in progress. And we hope to get as much feedback from people as possible about what they are doing, what they find challenging. Perhaps there are things that particular states might do differently to other states. And what we're really trying to do here is to just provide you with everything that you might need if you needed an absolutely basic starting point. And if you've already got these solutions that work really well, you can pick and choose the things that suit you to kind of make this a really nice polished product. But if you find that things work, then you can keep doing those things. If you're maybe not knowing where to begin, we've provided everything for you from the get-go. Alrighty, so let's dive into how a Discover Orienteering event will look. And hopefully it should look like a pretty simple kind of structure that maybe is quite familiar to some states who have already been working really quite hard in the beginner space. But it's your classic come and try event. But thinking about all of those aspects that we talked about before, with the feelings, with the jargon, with trying to make things easy to understand and really polish and refine those careful moments to make sure that things run smoothly. So we start off a Discover Orienteering event with a big whole group welcome and briefing. Everyone rocks up at the same time. Everyone's hanging out in the arena together. Maybe there's a tick-off sign-off sheet for people who, when they pre-registered and they can collect their timing chip to do the event. But everyone's milling together, and we want to immediately create this social, positive, community atmosphere. And then simultaneously, in that big throng, nice community moment, we can very easily provide information to a large group. So, um, delivering, and Kieran will speak about this later, what are those key pieces of information that we need to tell people in order to understand how they orienteer, and also all those safety moments, administrational things, maybe collectively thanking all of the volunteers, trying to create a really, I guess you could think of it like a park run moment. Think about the big group of people at the start, celebrating their 50 park run milestone, or in this case, thanking our volunteers for the time that they've put in, and getting things going on a positive note. Then in terms of getting stuck into the courses, we've got this setup where there are 6 very short orienteering courses to try. And the idea is that they progress slowly in difficulty, so that the entry point, the kind of course 1A course, is really, really simple. We orienteers could do it with our eyes closed. Every flag is visible from the previous one. Mum can always see her kid from the assembly area. Really, really simple start introduction to what the process of an orienteering course is like. And in that process, you can very quickly get the feel of how like how a course actually runs, and without any of those extra elements of how do I actually navigate to my next thing, like what symbols are represented on the map. You almost don't need any of those things to complete your first course. It's really just about sticking your timing chip into the start, sticking your timing chip into the number 1, which is right next to the start, and then going around and getting a feel for what orienteering actually is. And then as they complete courses, they can progress upwards to more and more challenges, and the courses can meet participants at the challenge level that they want to receive. So we've heard lots of feedback from different places that maybe this come and try event, it was too easy, it was so simple, orienteering's really boring, or oh my goodness, it was way too hard. I never want to go orienteering again. It went into the thickest scrub. It was awful. All I wanted to do was a nice stroll around the park. With this structure of having those multiple options that are short and you progress through, they can kind of graduate, feel a sense of accomplishment each time, and get up to a level where they do really feel challenged. Then to kind of break up the flow of courses, we've also got a set of what we'll call sideshow activities, little kind of carnival games to keep things fun, and perhaps encourage social interaction between orienteers so that they're starting to feel this sense of community, and maybe a little bit of competition between family members or between friends if that's what they're in for. But a really flexible feel where they can complete a course, maybe take a break, head over to these sideshows, give one of them a go, maybe try the other one, head back out on a course, and then keep going. And then when they've decided that they've had enough, there's a flexible finish time so that they don't have to keep going if they're tired. They've got plenty of time to get everything done if they want to. But when they finish, when they complete their last course, they will be obviously interacting with the volunteers as they finish. And that's the perfect moment to really engage with them about, with the participant about what's the next thing that they should be doing. If they had fun, here's the next thing to do. So a really obvious call to action that's plastered in all possible places, like on the map, flyers, people talking, make it really clear that it's a super simple, easy step from this come and try event to your local Learn to Orienteer, where you'll learn all of the intricacies of orienteering that you could ever want to, and really become a more confident member of the orienteering community. And so, with that in mind, it kind of makes sense to be scheduling these events really carefully so that the flow is really clear and easy for the participant. They finish their Discover Orienteering event, they receive their flyer, they can head onto the website, and immediately there's the next thing for them, um, when they decide that that's what they want to do. So perhaps with, a fortnight or a month's gap from Discover Orienteering to Learn to Orienteer, they can have a look, realize that, yep, this is the winter sport that they want their kids to be doing or that they want to do as a family, and sign up, have time to prepare, and then really dive into a more comprehensive um, series of orienteering lessons and experiences. So, having kind of gone through the structure of how an event will run, it's probably a good moment to think about, well, what are these instructions or the really key pieces of information that we need to provide to our participants? So I'll hand over to Kieran, who Daniel introduced before, is our new manager of coaching from OA. And he's been thinking quite hard alongside this Discover Orienteering event about what those really fundamental key pieces of information that we need to instill in beginners are.
Cool. Thank you for the intro. And I'll say too, I've come into this very late in the piece. So a lot of the groundwork obviously has happened before I've come in. So I'm not taking any credit for anything. A lot of stuff's happened before I've stepped in. So thank you. Thank you, David. I guess I've got two slides to talk about. They're quite brief because we want these skills and the delivery of this to be quite brief in practice. So you'll see here there's 5 skills for beginner success. There's sort of 6. There's a 0 there. And these are, as David mentioned, when you're in that sort of that big group and have an opportunity to explain sort of what's going on or whatever, there is a tendency to maybe over-explain or under-explain. It is this very fine line to navigate with people new to orienteering, especially when you look at like an orienteering map. I like to think of it as almost like a new language. You pick up this map and you have absolutely no idea what it means. So a lot of what David's been saying and trying to work towards here is around like incidental learning. You know, you've got the 6 progressive courses where things get more difficult, and as the participants go along these, they're learning as they go. So with these instructions or skills that you want to give, they are quite basic in essence because we don't want to scare people away with all these crazy terms, but to give them just enough that they can go out and participate. So I'll run through them very quickly. Event process. So this is around what you do with your timing chip. So you need to clear, you need to check, you go to the start, and then you complete your course. So you'll go orienteer, and then you finish, and then you download. So that in itself to us is a very easy process and quite fundamental, but that is something that it's just a few extra terms that they might not be aware of. So especially you could tie in the safety aspect around it, where you can use timing to work out where people are, but obviously in something like this you can see where everyone is most of the time. So that's that. And then we get into the 5 skills. So orientate the map. This in itself is just to make sure that you can read the map, similar to how a book you read it from left to right to down. It's to make sure that your map is facing the right way. You can use a very obvious something on the map. On the previous slide, I noticed that there was like a river running along the north edge of the map. If you stand there and say, hey, look, what can we see? There's this big feature over here. We can turn our map to make sure that that lines up. That in itself then segues nicely into what do the symbols mean? You pick up the map and you're like, what are all these colors? This doesn't look like Google Maps. I don't understand what this is. You can then talk through maybe a couple of the very obvious symbols. Yellow is open land. You might have some buildings. That's what these look like. You don't need to go into every single detail around this is what an impassable fence looks like. Well, you probably do want to talk about out of bounds because you don't want people running through there, but you don't have to go through every single nitty-gritty detail of the map because as they're out there, they should hopefully pick up some of these smaller, intricate things, but you want to give them just enough that they can understand which direction they sort of need to go and how they can use those symbols to at least orient the map. And then the next 3 points you've got there is the here I am, where am I trying to go, and how do I get there? So we'll call this the navigation process. And the cool thing with this process is it actually translates from the very beginner orienteers all the way to the top level elites because we all follow the same sort of process from getting from A to B. First of all, you need to know where you are on the map. Here I am. So can you identify where you are? Where am I trying to go? So that is around what does the next checkpoint look like? So if you're at 1, where is control 2 on the map? What does that look like? You might have learnt the symbols, so you'd be like, oh, I can see that it's on a tree. And then how do I get there? Well, that in itself is quite explanatory. How do you get from A to B? And then it's up to the participant to work out how to do that. Again, this is the same process that we all use as orienteers. It's just very different applications of there's different skills, different levels that you go through to get there. But at this level, it could be as simple as David said, you can see the next control. So you point in the distance and you be like, yes, that's my tree. That's where I need to go. How do I get there? Well, I can see it, so I can just run straight. But then by course 6, it might be a bit more difficult where you have to go around a building or navigate a particular way. So those are the skills. And again, the key thing here is it's not giving them too much information, but it's enough that they feel comfortable to go around. Obviously, some people have varying degrees of comfort, and as they progress through the courses, they might ask questions or need more information, and then you can accommodate that. But in the first instance, the key thing is to get people out, getting them to have fun and onto the map, and then they can learn from being on the map rather than standing listening to someone talk about all these things that they don't actually understand. So it's sort of learning by application. Oh, can I have the next slide, please? And then that in itself ties nicely to orienteering instructors. So this is a little plug for the Orienteering Learning Centre, and the idea that to support Discover Orienteering, we would love to see all of those like volunteers and supporters involved having that orienteering instructor accreditation, so that beginner level to the orienteering coaching pathway. That in itself is nice, as David mentioned, having a nationally consistent approach to these things. So if you've gone through the orienteering instructor course, then no matter where you are in the country, you've learnt the same skills and how to go about orienteering from that OA perspective. So having that consistency in approach is really important. And it also going through this course, the orienteering instructor course, it gives you the skills and knowledge to give that basic instruction around orienteering navigation. So understanding those skills that we just spoke about. And I think the other important thing too is it gives you the skills to create that safe, welcoming environment that is really important at this Discover Orienteering level. So tied in with this, of course, we've got the working with children checks and stuff like that, but it is around ensuring that it is this nice, positive, welcoming space that, you've gone through this course, you understand a few things that you might not have picked up as just a casual orienteer coming to help. So we're really pushing for all of those people who are involved with Discover Orienteering. This isn't a 1-month request or anything like that. It's definitely a long-term goal, but to have everyone going through that OA instructor course would be amazing. And yeah, red tape at the end of the road. Yeah, I think that's
And particularly like orienteering instructors, certainly to some of the people that I've talked to, have gone, well, I'm a really pro-skilled orienteer. I know everything there is to know about orienteering. I don't need to worry about orienteering instructor. The kind of whole point of doing it is so that you realize how little information and a beginner really knows, and the really basic core blocks of what people should be providing to beginners. So even though it might feel like, yep, I know all of those 5 things, they feel really simple, but going into the details of why are they important kind of facts to be giving people and how to deliver them, I think is probably really beneficial for everyone. So thank you very much, Kieran, for going through that. And yeah, we'll tie it back to Discover Orienteering with as our orienteering instructors get accredited, we feel that that is the kind of level of helper that is kind of required for being a volunteer or an assistant at Discover Orienteering events. Now, there is kind of a step above that. Like there's a big difference between turning up on the day and actually being the lead role, the person who's organizing everything, course setting, running the briefing, maybe dealing with permissions, those sorts of things. That's kind of more an organizer level. And we're looking in the future at how we can also potentially help the kind of learning of organizers more generally, not just for Discover Orienteering. But in the case of Discover Orienteering, we've got this mother document delivery guide that should take the organizer through everything that they possibly need to know about running a Discover Orienteering event. So it contains, like we're really doing a bit of a brief skim through overview today. It contains really detailed descriptions of how the kind of philosophy of Discover Orienteering has been created, and what the kind of core things that we should be thinking about when we're setting events. There are guides to do with course setting for how you create those 6 nicely spaced challenges of course. How to like a checklist of what the things are that you need to get done in order to run a Discover Orienteering event, and all of those kind of nitty-gritty details to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And then alongside that delivery guide are a whole bunch of resources that are there to assist both the organizer and the helpers of the Discover Orienteering event. And the production or creation of all of those resources has been really deeply tied to those 5 core skills, or the 6, including that event process, in order to help the delivery and the instruction of information at participants much easier and smoother, because we've definitely, through learning, through experience, through research, there's a lot of that the kind of best outcomes occur when we're able to provide information in as many ways as we can without necessarily overwhelming people. So we've got that briefing, we've got signage for placing around the assembly area, even signage of like helpful hints at control sites. We'll go into all of these details, but trying to create clever, neat, short, easy ways of providing all of those core things that participants need to know, so that they don't have to get stuck into all of that jargon and weird comprehensive information, and really just focus on that feeling of really enjoying an orienteering event without having to worry too much about all of that waffle on the sidelines. So the delivery guide is that core document. It refers to everything else, takes you through everything you need to know. And then there are a bunch of kind of side resources that are available to assist. So the kind of maybe biggest clump of resources, or the most significant, would be the sideshow activities. So what we've done for this Discover Orienteering event is we've taken activities from kind of other locations and morphed them, kind of played around with the design and the layout of things, to really make them work in this environment. So particularly that one on the left, hopefully many of you who have done beginner events have seen before. We call it the mountain ranges, or some might do directional dash, or there's many different names. But as a little offshoot from their main courses, they can come over to this sideshow activity. The cones are set up, and really all that should be necessary is for them to pick up a card, and they should pretty much know what's going on. Like, it's a very, very simple activity to get you introduced to the concept. And again, it teaches those kind of event process understandings, and also a couple of those core 5 fundamental skills, like orientating your map, thinking about the symbols. Even though there's no legend here, that map to ground kind of, what do these colors mean? Hey, look, there are cones that are these colors in real life, is a really kind of important skill for them to be learning, and it's done in a fun way, hopefully without too much instruction at the person. Obviously, having a volunteer available so that they can help maybe sort out some questions or encourage two friends to compete on the same course, running one person runs forward, one person runs backwards, see who can do it the fastest. But really, they should be easy to set up and easy to run for a large number of people. So we've got that mountain ranges thing. It does exactly what it looks like. There's just a course between the cones, and there's a bunch of, again, increasing difficulty so that they can choose the challenge that they want. And one thing that we found with the pilot event that we ran in the ACT was particularly with young kids, this was all they were interested in. It was the most amazing, epic, super fun thing they could ever possibly do. And maybe at the detriment of the event, because who cares about the real map? I want to do directional dash. It was so fun. Um, and they would go around and see if they could get faster and faster each time, or do it map memory, or go to every second control and then go to every odd numbered control and see what happened when they did that. There's lots of kind of variations of the same thing that they were trying, and it ended up being a really successful activity to complement the real orienteering courses. And alongside all of these activities, there are activity cards that explain to the volunteer how they set it up, and also more importantly, when someone comes, how do we interact with this participant? What things should we be talking to them about? How should we try and engage them, make things fun, really encourage an enjoyable, fun social experience? There's also in the middle, you can see there a kind of squiggly maze. Um, this one has also come from sporting schools, but probably not nationally. A couple of states have used it as their sporting schools activity, and it's one of my absolute favorites because it's really easy to set up, but it's actually can become quite a complex, fun activity. So the idea is it's just a regular kind of maze, and you can set it up using either just ropes on the ground, or if you want to get fancy, using pigtails and taping it up off the ground, and then either using cones as markers or even SI if you so choose. But the cool thing about this maze is it's symmetrical. And so two people can run exactly the same course with two different maps at the same time and directly compete against each other. Even though they're in kind of separate spaces on the maze, they're actually running the same leg at the same time. And so particularly for that kind of teenage, young adult sort of years, it's a really quite exciting activity because they get a bit competitive, see who can do the hard courses the fastest, and race each other directly from the start to the finish. Um, and then the final one, which we've created as sort of an optional extra activity, that in probably most circumstances you'll want to just set up the two main sideshows. But in cases where maybe you're expecting a very large number of people and want to split more off, or if you've got more younger, like if your Discover Orienteering event is aimed at more younger people, we've also got the clockwork activity. So it's basically a compass rose of cones spaced around in a circle, and you get a little control description sheet that just says northwest, south, southeast, dot, 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 dot. And the goal is to run to those cones on the card. And this is particularly good for younger people. Like, it's a really easy thing to understand. You just run to the cone with the letter that you see on your card, but it's still teaching those kind of important skills of, well, what do those spatial directions mean? You can introduce even elements of route choice by kind of adding a rule where you're not allowed to run through the center of the circle. You have to run around the outside. And so it becomes, well, which way around the circle is the fastest way to get to my control? And so you're naturally introducing these new concepts in a kind of fun, interesting way without having to sit down and teach them in a sort of proper curriculum. So that's those sideshow activities. We've also got, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, a whole bunch of helpful hint posters. And these are really closely tied to those 5 fundamental skills. And it's just as an extra way of providing information to people, either so that you don't have to make your briefing as long, or so that people can get reminded of the key facts when they're really needed rather than having to be spoken at by a volunteer. So you're potentially reducing the number of volunteers that you need at the start because you don't have to keep telling people to do a particular thing. You can just have someone there for when people struggle or don't understand what's going on. So a whole bunch of these things to do with the event process, arena layout, that sort of thing, and also diving deeper into the fundamental skills. So for instance, the card that's on the right is designed as you can see there's little kind of holes marked out on the top and the bottom. You place this on the ground next to a control with the north arrow pointing in the direction of north in real life. And so even when you're not around a helper or an orienteering instructor, you still get that little reminder of, hey, this is something that's important and helps me to finish my course. And it's really easy to quickly just align the big fat N on my map with the big fat N that's on the ground. And that helps to just reinstill those core skills that we're hoping that they learn and can grasp quickly so that they can get back to enjoying their course. And then there's also a whole bunch of resources to do with advertising and promotion. And this is certainly one of the things that for Learn to Orienteer, we in the ACT found the most helpful because there were just things that you could immediately pop up onto the website without having to go and learn silly graphic design software to make something pretty. You can just use the ready-made generic poster that was sitting in the drive, or you could take one of the posters that was already there and just update the details and get on your way much quicker. So there's posters, there's templates for, say, your website or for emailing out to particular groups of people that you want to bring to your event. Social media tiles for putting up on Facebook for, say, paid advertising or on your club page or something like that. And one of my favorite ones is also we've created a photo bank of photos that like action shots, relevant photos to particular events for Learn to Orienteer, Discover Orienteering, and Kiddo. So they're sitting there. You don't have to trawl through your archive of Facebook photos to find one that's not grainy and has a nice photo of someone smiling. Things are already there for you to just pluck out and use how you kind of see that requirement being filled. And of course, this is kind of one of the areas that is also easy for us to just keep updating and making more and more resources for people. So if you go into the drive and find that there's something there that you want, something not there that you do want, it's very, very likely that someone else will want it along the way as well. And so if you just pop in a request, then we can make sure that we get something out and everyone can benefit from that shared portfolio of resources. We've also been thinking quite hard about the online interactions that we want to be having with our participants. So particularly someone who has maybe never ever heard of orienteering before, wants to, well, maybe doesn't even yet want to interact with orienteering, trying to create the lowest barrier, easiest way for them to learn what orienteering is about and to find an event that suits them. So we've been, and this is still very much a work in progress, but thinking quite hard about our presentation of information for national websites. So at the moment, we're kind of creating, or the Kiddo one has already been created, websites for these different projects. Things might change a little bit in the future about like where exactly they're placed, but the information is kind of getting built and going up. And trying to make things really simple so that in as few clicks as possible, your potential beginner participant can head to the website or from whatever link they've been provided, get to the information that they need to understand very simply what orienteering is about, why it's for them, why they're going to have fun, and then get to an event and find an event near them. So there's kind of a lot going on in this space, and some of it is up, some of it isn't yet up. It's still happening. But we're we're quite keen to be creating these national online resources so that there's onus taken off states and clubs, and that there's these nice polished products online that states can refer to as this is the information that you might need, and potentially even in the future be the place where someone clicks to get to their sign up page. Now, obviously, there's a lot of kind of caveats and complications with trying to do something. As we said from the beginning, every state and club is very different. Um, and obviously, different ways of paying. Do we charge for it? They're all kind of questions that get asked all the time. Um, at the moment, the kind of what I'm thinking about as a solution to this kind of unique uh, registration requirements is that on um, the National Discover Orienteering page website, there is a page that says find an event. And what we can do is create a list of upcoming Discover Orienteering events around Australia. So all you have to do is search down your list for the nearest event in your city, and then you click, and that takes you directly to either Eventor, um, so in this case, Eventor, where you don't necessarily have to have the clubs running their registrations through Eventor, but if there is an event page set up with the information about the event, then they can just quickly click the registration link on the Eventor page without having to sign up for a membership and that sort of thing. Um, there are kind of questions around what should the cost to participants be. We are quite happy to keep this as an individual choice, much like with Learn to Orienteer, but keeping in mind the recommendation that cost to the participant is really heavily associated with the kind of polish of the event. So a beginner who's seeing a free thing might look at it and go, "Oh, okay, it's just kind of you rock up and maybe you get something and then maybe they try and get you to do something else." Whereas if there is a cost associated with it, there is an expectation that this will be a well-delivered, kind of nicely manicured event for them. And so we do recommend associating a price to your event, and running registrations. So what we did in the ACT for our pilot event, which I'll go into more detail about the pilot in a second, but we just ran our registrations through Stripe. So just a regular payment software, much like how you would maybe order merchandise from a website or something. It's literally just you click, it takes you to a payment page, and you fill out 3 lines that are like participant name, emergency contact, and email. And then you click pay, and it lists in a spreadsheet for us that we're going to have another participant at our event. And it's really, really simple for the participants to just click the link and hand over their money. Yeah, I think that's everything from this slide. Obviously, it's every club is different, and we're keen to make sure that we work with you to come up with something that both looks really highly polished from the participant end and is really as simple as possible for organizers. There's such as the pricing tool, which kind of follows the same vibe as has been used for Learn Orienteer. Also things like risk assessment templates, emailing communication to people who have signed up, like what are the details that they need to know before they come, what things should they wear, that sort of thing. And yeah, there's a bunch of resources that are available, and yeah, take a look through when we send out to participation coordinators those resources, and there should be pretty much everything that you need, but if you find some holes, we're very, very keen to fill them so that things are as easy as possible. So we'll talk very quickly about the ACT pilot event that we ran back in October in the lead up to our summer season. We managed to get 61 registrations, which we were very excited by because it's quite a lot larger than a lot of our kind of come and try or like festival events have been. The vast, vast majority of those were from paid social media advertising. So we spent about $200 on advertising with social media. And basically what that did was it just we clicked some of the perhaps interested cohorts that we might want to target, like row gainers or scouts or families who follow bushwalking pages or something like that. You can kind of choose what interest groups you might want, and Facebook goes ahead and just chucks informa like pretty pictures at them saying, "Come and sign up to our event," and that ended up working really, really well. And you get big bang for your buck with online advertising. Um, One of the reasons that we're suggesting paid registration and particularly pre-entry is because I'm sure lots of you who have run beginner come and try events before have found is that numbers can be really volatile. It's very hard to predict how many people are going to turn up to your event, and therefore how many maps do you print, how many volunteers do you need, what's the layout, do we have enough parking, dot 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 dot. It's much easier to get a grasp of things if you're getting people to sign up beforehand. So we made sure that pre-entry was the advertised option. And then we had a couple of people who came up on the day who said, "Oh, my friend was coming, and I wanted to come too. Can I sign up?" And that was super easy because we just left that pre-registration link open through the event. So they could come up and say, "I didn't enter, can I?" And we go, "Yep, just head to the same page that your friend did to sign up." Um, and we did get quite a lot of late registrations, but thankfully we got kind of prepared enough through that pre-registration process that we knew how many volunteers we needed. So we ended up using, I think, 7 volunteers for 60 registrations. So we had kind of one person on the start, 2 people on the download desk slash one of those roaming around, one person on the each sideshow, and then one person just wandering around the courses trying to find people who were having trouble. And we found that that really worked quite well. There was a lot for our volunteers to do, but the what they were having to do was the fun social interactions. A lot of the explanation was covered by the briefing or by the signage, and they were really trying to just get people pumped up to try and go to the sideshow activities, race each other. Did you know that this control is kind of marked with this control description? Isn't that cool how the numbers match up between your control code boxes and what's on the unit? There was more time free for them to do those interesting, fun interactions rather than the kind of monotonous teaching people everything, instructing them that was required. So that was a really a good thing to see. There was an excellent atmosphere. There were lots of good vibes with the kids going around on the sideshows. The parents were having fun racing each other too. And generally we heard really, really positive feedback. There were a couple of kind of minor things that people mentioned. The key one from a few people was the courses weren't hard enough, which was kind of an awesome thing to hear, really. Because one, it's a super easy fix. Like you just next time you make that final course or final couple of courses go into a more interesting area. But it was a really good sign because it meant that people were engaging, they were understanding those core concepts without too much overwhelming kind of feeling. They were feeling confident, they were up for more challenge, which was excellent to see. As I said before, we did registration through Stripe. We did have like we were trying to work out a little bit how to place this Discover Orienteering event as optimally as possible just before Learn to Orienteer. So we went for 1 week so that we could go, you've done Discover Orienteering. Now the next thing is Learn to Orienteer, get into it straight away. And the time was the exact same time of day and during the week as Learn to Orienteer. So they should hopefully have that free time the next week as well. We found that that didn't work so well, that perhaps uh, more people, like what we found was more people ended up going to regular community events afterwards, which is not a total disaster, but weren't funneling directly into Learn to Orienteer in that next week as we intended. So there's potentially that reason because of the 1 week gap. And so there wasn't enough time for the kind of prepare your life or switch to my winter sport being orienteering kind of things. There's also then the element that we were advertising both Learn to Orienteer and Discover Orienteering simultaneously. And so we got really good uptake to both things, but potentially the demographics were slightly different. That because in ACT we run Learn to Orienteer as a 7 week program with club membership and you rock up every week for an hour, you kind of have to be a little bit committed or already quite excited to sign up straight away for Learn to Orienteer. And the Discover Orienteering people were more the kind of, well, it's pretty cheap, I'll give it a go, and maybe this will interest me. Whereas the Learn to Orienteer people were more the kind of already sold on this being a long-term thing. So we did see transferal to community events, but not straight into Learn to Orienteer. And we think that can be quite easily fixed by just separating the gap a little bit more so that there's a clear distinction between coming to a Discover event and then going on to Learn to Orienteer. Um,
David, can I ask you to share about whether you had an emphasis on results at all?
Yes. So we actually, the way we ran the event, we tried to keep things really, really simple, and we didn't bring a computer to the event. So all we had was the little SI download connected straight to a splits printer. So it actually wasn't even possible for someone to mispunch because the printer had no idea what courses people were doing. There was no information loaded. So the emphasis was definitely on go out there, have a go, complete some courses. How cool is it that you can beep this thing into the units and you get your time out and you get to see that you've punched number 31 and then 47 and dot dot dot. But really, there was no kind of there was no way to even confirm whether or not they'd actually done their course without going down the splits, which we definitely didn't do. And we didn't even bother explaining that it was possible to accidentally not complete your course. So the vibe was definitely much more about go and experience how fun it is to get between controls and to navigate your own way through the forest, not about trying to be the fastest person around the course or that sort of thing. We had those small competitive elements for people who were keen on it in the sideshows, but for the 6 sequential courses, it was really all just about getting out there, giving it a go, and having as much fun as possible. Cool. So with information about the pilot out of the way, now's the fun bit where we talk about how we can actually get Discover Orienteering going across Australia. So the awesome thing is we've already got Victoria down to Debbie Dodd has taken on organizing the first Discover Orienteering event in Victoria, and that'll be happening in I think it's about a month or two.
It's in April.
Yeah, 2 months. And so she's got the kind of resources and has started planning. And we're really keen for more states to follow suit and to give this a go. Because we really saw how great it ended up being in ACT, and we're also going to be running another one in late March. And so getting things going is kind of where we're at. So the way that we're going to get resources distributed to the relevant people is through your state's participation coordinator. So they will receive the drive, and then they can share the relevant resources to specific people. We're also or in the process of ordering um, uh, promotional physical materials for at the event, so to make things look really polished. Things like the teardrop flags that you regularly see for clubs and for the start and finish, making a nice Discover Orienteering one, and similarly hung banners like you will have seen from Learn to Orienteer. So nice and easy things to set up, make an event look really polished, make it clear where a participant should go to find their event and get to the helper desk or the registration desk as they need to, and really make things look well branded. We're also not looking into, we are purchasing high-vis vests for volunteers, and the way that we want to kind of make this happen is through our orienteering instructors. So the idea should be that anyone who has this Discover Orienteering or Orienteering Instructor vest on is someone who is able to help people at their Discover Orienteering event. So we're still working on the kind of design and how things will look and how that'll get implemented, but look out for that another kind of nice polished thing to contribute to event branding. And then that equipment can also get used at other events. So at your regular community events, having that person maybe at the start or the registration desk who's helping people figure out what's going on, in that high-vis vest with the kind of, you can eyeball and go, yep, that's someone who knows what they're doing. And similarly, with all of these resources, they can be adapted and used for community events using the same kind of philosophies that we've been going into for this specific Come and Try event. There's also through the Australian Sports Commission, we've received money that we can use for seed funding for these events. So to kind of set up the initial Discover Orienteering event with your club, purchasing whatever equipment you need, such as the kind of ropes and cones and whatever for your sideshow activities, maybe paying the organizer for that first event because there is a bit more effort associated with the first event, setting courses, getting permissions, those sorts of things. Once they've then set up that first event, it becomes really, really easy to do the second one because everyone who's coming to this event is a newcomer, a beginner. They're probably not going to be coming back to this particular event. They'll be going on to the next thing. So you can reuse courses, activities, signage, all those things in the future events. But there's money there to help set up and create that first event. And that will again be managed through the state participation coordinator. And we're expecting it to be roughly $1,000 per state for that seed funding. So given that really this is a pretty low cost event to run, it should be plenty to help you get going. And yeah, as I mentioned before, a lot of these resources are pretty much already perfect for implementing at regular club events as well. So thinking about those core philosophies, helping participants get the information that they need quickly and simply so they can get out on their course and have as much fun as possible. So that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted to say. I've got some links there so that when we send it out, you've got access to everything you need. But I think unless Daniel wanted to add anything, we can open up for some questions from people if there are some.
I think you've done a wonderful job, David. Thank you so much. Yeah, if you have a comment or if you do have any questions, further clarification, please take yourself off mute and ask away. There was one comment in the chat from Robin who said it's very similar to what they were doing with their school events. So having several courses, increasing difficulty, and then again, not such a focus on results. but kids end up focusing, comparing their splits with each other as well. And if I can just mention about that
And
emphasis
then they
from,
want. So I was just going to say, then they want to do the course again and do it faster.
yes, even some competing against themselves. Wonderful. One thing that the ASC is trying to transition sport in Australia from is the old approach that was either focused around the officials or the coach or the sport to be participant focused so that the participant has a good experience. And hopefully you've got that feeling from this program tonight. Anyone, any questions? Mike?
Yeah, I thank you, David, for your really good informative presentation and listen to you. It reinforced something to me that I have been thinking about a while based on my professional work as a teacher. Our sport has a lot of interesting vocabulary and language. So certainly in education speak, it's called tier three words. So words that are very specific to a particular topic. So I think it's part of this process. I think it's an opportunity for us to really clarify so that we have a common understanding in the process in terms of the vocabulary of the sport, which I think will be of a big benefit to people as well. So that was just a little bit of a thought or wondering about, you know, getting people to feel comfortable about a sport with in terms of the language we use in the sport.
Yeah, and it's definitely something we've been thinking quite hard about. Particularly like it's also very hard to detrain orienteers from saying these things. Like the words punch or splits or leg are such kind of common vocabulary that we use. But through the resources and like the signage and stuff, we've tried to be really careful about the words that we're using.
Yeah.
So, for instance, punch, we changed to beep. Like, there's no functional difference in terms of the sentence, but it just conveys immediately what they're trying to achieve. Whereas we used to be doing this to get our punch cards. We don't need to do that anymore. And also in the resources and the kind of help sheets for volunteers, there are some kind of quick little hints about, well, maybe you should replace punch with beep, or you should replace control, even is kind of a weird one that we all know exactly what it means, but what is a control? That particularly for your first introduction, whether you then continue on or not, but rather than saying control as your first thing, you say checkpoint because everyone knows what a checkpoint is. And then you can briefly say, well, we do call them controls, but really they're just checkpoints. And the idea is that for this whole event, we don't really care, like we don't care whether they use the right vocabulary, just that they're getting that experience and having fun. When they go on to learn to orienteer, they'll start to go into more in depth about all of those things like attack points and route choice and catching features, all those different things that we orienteers rely on to navigate. But at this stage, it's just not important.
Yeah,
David, I think you'll find that some of those terms that you use, they're actually used internationally. It's not just used in Australia. So you've got to be careful that you do actually introduce the right terms and terms that they're going to understand. Otherwise, they might rock up an event somewhere else and not actually understand the vocabulary. So I think if you're going to, people do use the word punch everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So you do have to sort of say it's commonly known as punching the control. But there are some other terminology which is like using a timing chip. As having an IT background, I cringe because the official term is ETAG. So, like you've got to be careful that you don't introduce one terminology for something that is just as obscure.
Oh yeah, and I think David, this having now this beginning product here, it's a really good chance to think about other aspects of our sport to help make it more accessible and user friendly, and it ties in a little bit, Daniel, with the work that we're doing with Aspect about that accessibility and usability work that we're doing. So people, there's a whole lot of cross connections with other activities we're working on in the participation space as well. So it's an exciting time to be involved in the sport.
Yeah, and particularly one relevant thing that is on the cards is producing explanatory videos. So that's kind of the next step that we want to do, particularly for tying to that explore phase and learn phase, and making people comfortable rocking up for the first time or for their next go, is that they don't need to know this information to rock up to an event, but if they want to know it or if they want to learn more, then they can go on and they can find the video that is all about how your SI card or your timing chip works. And there's that little bit of extra time where they can sit down and actually kind of connect the dots between a timing chip and a E-tag and an SI card, and all of those things that we call are just the same thing. And it's this little thing on your finger, and how it actually works.
Yeah, I mean, I just call it the stick.
Just to add to what David was saying, though, I think the important thing is around the like participation and fun side of things, and to note that at the Discover Orienteering level, these are complete beginners, right? So the further they progress within the sport, if they do this and they love it, then that's the opportunity to learn the correct jargon and all that sort of stuff. So, we might cringe or whatever and have to de-learn. It's more around that participation side of things and actually just getting them out there. They could call it whatever they want. They came back and be like, oh, this thing on my finger. If they're saying that, but they're doing it with a smile on their face, it doesn't matter in this particular context.
And the idea is that the next thing we're pointing towards is learn to orienteer. And when you do learn to orienteer, you get your participant handbook, and in the back there's a glossary that describes all of those key terms as well.
Any other questions for us tonight?
So, David, when with the Discover Orienteer, like when you is it all going to be using SI? I mean, what sort of is there a baseline there on what's being used?
Yeah, so that is the kind of recommendation, like strongly recommended, that it should be creating an environment where they feel really comfortable for the next thing. So whatever your club event looks like, we try to mirror that in the beginner program. So using SI at regular events, if they've already had that introduction in their first time and they're comfortable, like it's in this very simple circumstance, then it's one less thing for them to have to think about in their next interaction with orienteering. So yeah, in the delivery guide, we are recommending using SI at controls for all of the courses, and then optional at the side shows whether you want to or not. At our trial event, we didn't. We decided it was better to just have people running around the cones rather than having to mess with the printer every time. But of course, again, uniqueness, it's not, it doesn't have to be totally prescriptive. If you find that you've had something that works really well, you have another event that leads out of it that maybe uses punch cards, or that's what they do at school and that's what they're more comfortable with, then it is possible to kind of make things fit to what your requirements are.
I'm interested to know what sort of price you put on the pilot course, David.
Yeah, so we did a $12 entry fee. I think this time around we'll increase it to 16 because I don't think anyone had any issues with paying that price from what, like, there were no complaints as far as we heard. And that just gives a bit of buffer to cover the costs of the kind of expensive, if you've got an office administrator, or to recognize the time that was spent by the lead organizer or whatever, and covering cost of materials.
Was that $12 per head. So a family of 5 is paying $60.
Yeah, so that is how we did it. We went for simplicity rather than kind of necessarily the most equitable pricing model. Because in this case we just had that button where you click it and you just choose the number of tickets that you want to purchase, and then it just multiplies 12 by however many that is. We're not saying that
Yes.
that's necessarily the perfect solution.
It's about well, it's actually double our club entry fees. Juniors
Right.
pay $6 for a club entry fee. So that sounds incredibly expensive to me.
Yeah, so our club entry fees in ACT are a bit more expensive. Um, it is something that is quite like it's an age like this topic. We've been arguing about it for years and years, and I don't think there is a solution that everyone will decide and agree on. Um, the what we frequently find is that it's always orienteers who decide that events cost too much money. Um, it's not the new people are surprised when they come and they get their first entry free, and they just kind of go, oh, or like when their fee was only $5 or whatever, they just go, oh, is like are we all paying that much? Or like there is sometimes genuine surprise that it is cheap or free or whatever. Um, and that particularly when you're first coming into it, there is an association of the price with the level of excellence of the event that they expect. I mean, you go to trail races and you pay hundreds of dollars, um, or you pay your pickleball membership and it's in the hundreds of dollars again. Like it varies around the place, but we have definitely found that it's orienteers who are worried about prices, not the new people who are turning up.
I also think the cost of living in Canberra is probably higher than where we are
Yeah.
as well. So you've got to weigh it up for your own
Yeah,
state,
and
haven't
so
you?
again, it points back to every situation is different, and it's okay to choose different models. This is just what we picked, and we found it worked.
David, I take it from your comments earlier that you're going to run the same program using the same maps in the same location next time you do it. So
Yeah,
you've sort of found some central location that you think works well, and
yeah,
that's where
and
you're
so the
advocating.
nice thing is that Canberra is not the biggest place. I think potentially in the future we might go to try out a far north side one or a deep south one. But at the moment we've got it centrally placed. Like the picture that the river that Kieran was talking about was Lake Burley Griffin, right in the middle of Canberra. So it would be about a 15-minute drive for 90% of residents.
Yep,
Um, and so the great thing is that we've just got everything sitting there now. All we need to do is print the maps. We've got the signs, we've got everything else.
yep,
The permissions we know are easy because it's a place we've used before. And so we can just repeat everything stock standard.
yep. That sounds great. So it sounds like it makes it so easy. That's great.
Yeah.
There's no more questions. We might start winding it up, but of course, always reach out if you have other questions or you'd like to know more. So, participation at orienteering.asn.au. David can also be contacted, david.s@orienteering.asn.au, or even you could reach out to us on social media. So thank you again, everyone, for coming along. This is the start of hopefully an increase of our participation. We're looking at the numbers that were registered last year, and we're 300 more than the year before. So we have stopped the slide, which was the goal of the first orienteering participation plan. And so hopefully this is going to be something that really boosts up the grassroots, really creates a bigger pool for us to then encourage through to the learn phase and then into the club participation stages. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for all the work you have done, David. Thank you, Mike, for this and the board for all your support.
And we're very keen for all of you that have now been totally sold on this concept. If you want to jump the gun of your participation coordinator receiving resources, just reach out directly and we can start to help you on your way to running one of these events.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, David. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining tonight on behalf of the board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all. Enjoy your evening.
All right.
You too.
Cheers, Daniel. Thanks,
See
David.
ya.
Bye.